Welcome back to Cinema Recaps. Today I'll introduce a crime thriller movie released in 2010 titled 13. Warning, spoilers ahead. Be careful and pay attention. In a building where money exchanges hands constantly under a peculiar light, Vincent is pointing a gun at a man's head, who is also aiming his gun back at Vincent. As Vincent waits for the perfect moment to shoot, he recalls how it all began 4 days earlier in Ohio. At that time, Vincent, along with his mother and sisters, decided to sell their house to pay for his father's medical bills, as he was hospitalized due to an accident. Every day, Vincent visits his father before heading to work. He is an electrician, and today, his client is Mr. Harrison, who just received a mysterious letter, unaware that the police are secretly photographing outside his house. When Mr. Harrison tells his girlfriend about the letter, Vincent overhears that it could bring him a lot of money. Later that day, Vincent returns home to celebrate his sister's birthday and is delighted to hear her wish for a lamb of her own. Meanwhile, across the country, Jasper Baggas is meeting with a mysterious group to borrow $2 million, promising to repay $3 million in 3 days. The following day, a doctor informs Vincent that his father needs another surgery, increasing their debt even further. Returning to Mr. Harrison's house for work, Vincent accidentally overhears a conversation about a special job that would bring a large amount of money in just 1 day. Previously, Mr. Harrison had completed the same job through sheer luck, though the memories still haunt him. After his friend leaves, he goes to his room to relax but dies from an overdose. After the police finish their investigation, Vincent is allowed to leave. Before leaving, he grabs a mysterious envelope from Mr. Harrison's desk. Inside, there is a train ticket to New York and a CPS pickup receipt. Vincent goes to the post office, shows his ID as requested, and receives a package containing a phone, $500, a key, and a letter with a spider logo, along with instructions to use the money for a hotel in New York. He is only allowed to use this phone and will receive further instructions later. Harrison's girlfriend reports the missing envelope to the police. When checking at the post office, they found Vincent's name listed as the recipient of Harrison's package and passed this information to Detective Milan. The person investigating the case requested surveillance on Vincent. The next day, Vincent dresses in his best suit, boards a train to New York, unaware that he is being followed by the police. He arrives in the city, stays at the hotel as instructed. Late at night, Vincent receives a call on his new phone, impersonating Harrison to get new instructions. He follows the instructions and the next day goes to a Postnet store near Grand Central, uses the key to open a mailbox, and finds another envelope with a new train ticket, a cork labeled number 13, and more instructions. The train heads to Macomb, but Vincent is instructed to get off one stop early. On the train, his ticket is checked, and the conductor informs the police of his destination. However, by disembarking early, Vincent gains a few minutes to evade the police. Next, Vince takes a cab to the outskirts of town. After the taxi leaves, another car arrives. The driver is Jack, who also has a cork with number 13, just like Vince. After Vince shows his cork, Jack calls him over, takes the phone, and drives him away. Milan and the police arrive shortly after, asking the cab driver for directions, but it's too late. There's no trace to follow. A while later, Jack brings Vince to an old shack in the woods. There, 2 other men provide Vince with new plain clothes, inspect his old clothes, and even cut off the heels of his shoes to ensure he's not hiding anything. Vince is then driven to another location, this time a grand mansion filled with wealthy people. Here he meets his patron Joe, who quickly realizes he's not Harrison. Vince explains that Harrison is dead and he took his place. Reluctantly, Joe agrees to let him stay to avoid causing trouble with other patrons. Meanwhile, large bets are taking place downstairs. Jasper arrives, betting on player No. 6, while Joe bets on Vince, who is assigned number 13. The game they're betting on turns out to be Russian roulette, a deadly gamble. Vince is handed a gun and stands in a circle with the other players, all wearing black shirts with their numbers. Each man receives a single bullet, spins the chamber, points his gun at the person in front while being targeted by the one behind. They wait for the light with the spider logo to light up, signaling them to shoot. Whoever survives moves to the next round. Vince is incredibly nervous and has Jack help him load his gun. When the light finally turns on, several men fall, but the round isn't over yet as Vince hasn't fired. A guard approaches, threatening to shoot him if he doesn't follow the rules, so Vince gathers his courage and finally pulls the trigger. Fortunately, the man in front of him survives. After the first round, Joe speaks to Vince privately, encouraging him to be tougher. Joe also begins taking bets from patrons who lost their players. while Jack offers Vince some morphine, which he declines. Then, player number 17 begs his patron, Jimmy, promising 50 times more if he helps him escape. Jimmy is puzzled why Jefferson would participate if he already has money, and Jefferson shares a story about his past. He was in prison until one night he was locked in a box and shipped to this mansion, spending 2 whole days inside. But Jimmy isn't moved by his tale and refuses to help. Jasper is also increasing his bets on his player, his brother Ronald Lynn Bagas. Ronald was recently in a mental institution, but Jasper took him out to make him a player. The second round begins, with each gun now holding 2 bullets. Half of the players fall, and Vince survives by sheer luck, as the person behind him didn't get a chance to fire. There's a surprise moment when number 16 stands back up after falling, but the doctor deems him unfit to continue, and the guards finish him off. Player number 11, Hans, has a breakdown, and his patron, Schlendorf, tries to calm him with a motivational speech, but it's ineffective. Jefferson speaks with Jimmy again, sharing how he was arrested for robbing a truck and hid the money in a safe place before being caught. If he loses the game, Jefferson wants Jimmy to find the money using a map he just drew, which he keeps in his pocket. Jimmy can keep half the money, as long as the other half goes to Jefferson's son, who's also in prison. Jimmy agrees to the deal. While gathering more bets, Jasper recalls taking his brother out of the hospital. Ronald had stopped taking his meds, thinking he felt better without them, but now he looks unwell. When Jasper draws a number, learning Ronald will aim at number 13, Ronald goes berserk, throwing an ashtray at Vince's head, causing Jasper to step in to prevent a scene. The third round begins, and the stress visibly affects all the players. Hans receives morphine to calm him and participate, while number 3 requires a chair to continue. Ronald taunts Vince, even slapping him, but the host intervenes before things escalate. In this round, each player has 3 bullets. They proceed as usual and fire, leaving only 5 players alive: Vince, Jefferson, Ronald, number 3, and number 9. This means the game has entered its final stage. 5 balls are placed on the table, 2 black and 3 white. The patrons of the remaining players will draw a ball each, and the 2 who get black balls will face each other in the final duel, while the others are free to leave. Jasper and Joe draw the black balls, meaning Vince will duel against Ronald. With an experienced player, Jasper attracts most of the new bets, but Joe persuades Schlendorf to bet on Vince with 5-to-1 odds for bigger winnings. Jimmy informs Jefferson he can collect his money and go, but when Jefferson is distracted, changing back into his regular clothes, Jimmy tries to kill him. Fortunately, a guard intervenes, reminding Jimmy that survivors cannot be harmed. Jefferson mocks Jimmy, showing a blank paper he had in his pocket, claiming it was a trick. After the guard and Jimmy leave, Jefferson reveals it was a decoy. He still has the map and proceeds to burn it before finally leaving. Before the final round, Ronald lashes out at Jasper, insulting him and demanding a share of the money, knowing this time Jasper took money from their parents. Jasper had used it to put Ronald in the mental institution, only bringing him out to play the game without sharing his winnings. We return to the beginning of the story as the final duel is about to start. Each player is given 3 bullets. Vince and Ronald look directly at each other, pointing their guns, and when they shoot, neither falls, a lucky round for both. An extra bullet is added, and this time Ronald dies, making Vince the winner of the game. Schlendorf celebrates his risky bet, Jasper mourns his brother, but Vince feels the weight of Ronald's death on his shoulders. The final prize is $1.85 million, and the man paying him calls him lucky since Ronald had won all his previous duels. Schlendorf and Joe congratulate Vince and offer him a ride to the train station, which Vince pretends to accept. But when he goes upstairs to grab his things, he escapes through a window. Jack notices Vince's disappearance, but Joe seems unconcerned. The next morning, Vince arrives at the station, where he is spotted by the cab driver from the day before. The driver calls the police and informs them of Vince's location. Luckily for him, Vince sees the police cars approaching from afar and hides his money bag in a trash can before being caught. He's taken to Milan for interrogation. The detective questions him about the money, but Vince pretends not to know, fabricating a story on the spot. He explains he never made it to the competition because they realized he wasn't Harrison, so they dropped him in the forest to shoot him, but he ran away. As proof, Vince shows Milan his worn-out shoes, pretending they lost their heels from running so hard. Vince offers to identify the faces if Milan catches these men, but can't take him to the location as they had blindfolded him. With no further clues or evidence, Milan has no choice but to release Vince. After taking another cab to the station, Vince rushes back to the trash can only to find his bag gone. He then notices all the trash bags have been changed, meaning they were emptied recently. He begins tearing the bags open and, fortunately, finds his money. Knowing he can't risk it again, he goes to the post office, places all the money in a box, and sends it to his family via registered mail. He then calls his mother to inform her about the package, so someone will be home when the mailman arrives the next day. After spending the night at a hotel, Vince stops by a grocery store the next morning to buy some snacks. There, he sees a lamb plushie that reminds him of his sister and ends up paying $100 for it as the clerk is reluctant to sell it. It's finally time to go home to Ohio. Vince boards his last train, with Jasper secretly following, making small talk as if nothing were out of the ordinary. When the train stops at its first station, Jasper shoots Vince and takes his bag, thinking the heavy plushie is filled with money. Before dying, Vince swallows the post office receipt, thinking of his family. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.